Chapter 7 of Finn the Wolfhound by Alec John Dawson. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 7, Revelations. It is the custom at dog shows for the authorities to distribute certificates on colored cardboard of all the awards made by the judges. At this show of Finn's great triumph, first prize cards were all blue, second prize cards red, and third prize cards yellow. The custom was for exhibitors proudly to affix these cards to the wire network stretched above the bench of the winning dog. So it fell out that soon after the judging of wolfhounds was over, 2 red cards and 2 blue cards were affixed over Kathleen's bench, and the mistress of the kennels lavished considerable attention upon her, lest she should be moved to jealousy of Finn. The decoration of the wirework over Finn's bench was most striking. First, there were 4 blue first prize cards for his sensational win in Open, Limit, Novice, and Junior classes. Then there was a very handsome card with ribbons attached, signifying that Finn had won the Challenge Shield for the best Irish Wolfhound in the show. And then there were 2 other blue cards, telling that Finn had won 2 special prizes. One, a medal offered by a member of the Irish Wolfhound Club for the best hound at the show bred by its exhibitor, and another, of 2 guineas, offered by a well-known Irish sportsman for the biggest Irish Wolfhound in the show. And so Finn sat in state beneath a sort of dome consisting of no fewer than 7 trophies. It seemed a little hard on that magnificent hound, his sire, who occupied the next bench, under the shelter of but one solitary red card. But Dermot Asthore was a philosopher, and, as has been said, weary of shows. He lay curled up like a great cat, and slept stolidly, presenting nothing more conscious to the passing throng than a small triangular section of one bloodshot eye. With Finn, matters were otherwise. His numerous trophies won him much attention, even from the large majority who were ignorant of his great technical claims to fame. There was always a little group in front of Finn's bench, and those of his admirers who had claims upon the master, besides many who had none, were continually begging that he should be taken down from the bench so that they might admire his full stature. Then there were newspaper men with cameras and notebooks, and there were dealers with cheque-books and a ready hand and eye for depreciation. But these were given no sort of encouragement by the master. Finn received as much attention in the evening papers that day as any leader of human society, and in the papers devoted to doggy interests a great deal more. He was conscious of more of this than you might suppose, even though he could not read newspapers, but the thing he was most keenly conscious of was the fact that he had managed greatly to please the master and mistress of the kennels. Finn felt happy and proud about this, but although he was taken down from the bench several times and led into out-of-the-way corners where his chain could be removed and he was able to stretch his limbs, still he became pretty thoroughly tired of the publicity and racket of the dog show before he was led out of the building at 10 o'clock that night with Kathleen by the master. The mistress had gone home to Tara early in the evening, but the master was sleeping in lodgings near the palace, which he had engaged on the clear understanding that he was allowed to bring the wolfhounds there with him. Finn had not realized as yet that one of the penalties of the fame that he had won lay in the fact that he was obliged to spend another 2 whole days in the show building. But though Finn and Kathleen knew it not, their lot was a far more fortunate one than that of the great majority of their kind at the show. Knowing that they would be unhappy if left in the building at night, that they probably would be too much wrought up to eat there, and that they would feel being chained up for too long more than most dogs, the master had arranged to take them out at night, in order that they might have half an hour's freedom before supper and retirement to a sleeping place in the room he had taken for himself. There were dogs in the show whose masters did not come near them after the judging on the first day until the end of the 3rd day. These unfortunates were left to the rather chancy attentions of the show attendants, who, with thousands of dogs to care for, could hardly be expected to give any of them much individual notice. On the evening of the second day of the show, while the Master was engaged in conversation at some distance from Finn's bench, the young hounds from the cottage by the Downs received a visit from a man who showed the utmost admiration for them, and particularly, of course, for Finn. This man, whose appearance rather reminded Finn of one whom he had heard referred to as the gamekeeper down in Sussex, looked up Finn's name and ancestry in the show catalogue, and gave particular heed to the fine display of prize cards over his head. He fondled Finn for several minutes, and Finn knew by the various smells which hung about the man that he was accustomed to mixing a good deal with dog folk. Before turning away, this friendly and admiring man presented Finn with a small piece of meat which he took from a paper bag in one of his pockets, and of all the meat that Finn had ever tasted, this piece had the most fascinating smell and the most provocatively exciting and pleasing flavour. He meditated over this piece of meat for quite a long time, and when, during the last afternoon of the show, the friendly stranger appeared before him again, Finn welcomed the man effusively and with nose and paw, plainly asked for some more of that fascinating meat. The man chuckled and rubbed the backs of Finn's ears in an affectionate manner for several minutes. What Finn found more to the point was that, before leaving, the man did present him with another small section of this delicious meat with the fascinating smell. Finn wished there was more of it, but he felt exceedingly grateful to the stranger for the one piece and for the rest of his friendly attention. By payment of a small fee, the Master was enabled to take Finn and Kathleen away from the show much earlier on that evening than before, and a few hours later they were all three being welcomed at home by the Mistress of the Kennels and Tara. Tara, by the way, was hardly able to spare time for a remark at first. She was so busy sniffing all around Finn and Kathleen, and reading for herself the sort of record of their recent adventures which their coats and her delicate sense of smell provided. The three hounds dined sumptuously and in a row, while the Master and the Mistress sat before them, fighting their battles over again and discussing their triumphs in the show ring. Then, the night being fine, the three were allowed to wander out into the orchard for a quarter of an hour or so before going to bed. The Master remained in his den talking. Directly Tara reached the orchard she barked out loud, "Who's there?" An unmistakable sort of bark, one would have thought, but the Master was pretty thoroughly tired, and perhaps the fact that he was chatting with the Mistress prevented his understanding Tara's bark. At all events, he paid no heed to it. Tara promptly trotted across to the gate between the orchard and the open down, followed closely by Finn and Kathleen. There, much to Finn's delight, they found the friendly stranger of the show. Tara eyed the man with hauteur, as one whose acquaintance she had not made. Kathleen remained modestly in the background. Finn, with lively recollections of the peculiarly savoury meat which the stranger dealt in, placed his forepaws on the top of the gate and lolled his tongue at the man in friendly greeting. The man gave Finn a provokingly tiny fragment of the savoury meat, and rubbed the young hound's ears in the coaxing way he had. Then he stepped back a pace or two, and produced a large piece of the meat. "Here, boy! Here, Finn! Jump, then, Finn!" The gate was less than 5 feet high, and the seductive odour of this peculiar meat floated just beyond it in the still night air. Finn drew back a pace or two, and then with a beautiful spring cleared the gate easily. While giving Finn the piece of meat he had been holding, the man slipped a swivel on to the ring of the handsome green collar, and attached to the swivel there was a strong leather lead. The man moved on slowly, with another piece of meat in his hand, and Finn paced with him willingly enough. When Finn had finished the next piece of meat, he was 100 yards away from the orchard. He looked back then, and an uncomfortable thrill passed through his young heart, A vague thrill it was, conveying no definite fear or impression to his mind. Still, it was uncomfortable. He had half a mind to go back and rejoin Tara and Kathleen, and so, tentatively, he halted. If the friendly stranger had tried to force Finn then, there would have been trouble. But he did not. Instead, he bent down and played with Finn's ears, and then brought another piece of meat out of his pocket. Holding this out, he moved on again, and the dog followed, forgetful now of his momentary thrill of discomfort. After all, he thought, vaguely, very likely this unaccustomed night walk was all part of the show and its many novel experiences. There had been night walks at the end of each show day. When Finn had had another morsel of the meat, the friendly stranger put another collar on his neck and removed the green one. Then he began to trot, and Finn trotted with him quite contentedly. Finn was always glad to run. So the two trotted for miles, through the mild, still October night, the man breathing heavily. Once something made Finn pause suddenly, and the pause let him into a secret. The collar he was wearing now was different from any other he had known in his short life. If you pulled against it, it slipped round your throat so tightly as to stop your breathing instantly and absolutely. The only thing to do was to go the way the collar and lead pulled. Then immediately the pressure relaxed. It was a collar that had to be obeyed, that was evident. These slip collars are well known to some members of the Great Dane family, and particularly to those who are owned by dealers. But their use came with rather a shock to lordly young Finn, who, living the free and happy life he always had lived, there beside the Sussex Downs, had rarely been asked to wear a collar of any sort. After a time, Finn and the stranger came to a little town, and walked into the yard of an inn. There another man met them, to whom Finn's friend said hurriedly, "I'll walk straight on. You drive on with the cart after me. Don't stop till you clear the village." "You've got him, then?" said the second man. "Never you mind about that. Can't you see I've got him? You get the pony out." And then Finn followed his leader out of the yard, and through the quiet little village to the open country beyond. But by this time Finn was beginning to feel that the night walk had been prolonged far enough. There was no sign of any more of the aromatic meat coming his way, and he had given up asking for it, and nosing the man's pocket. He thought he would like to turn now, and get back to Kathleen and Tara and the master. The day and its immediate predecessors had been tiring, and Finn thought with strong desire of his fragrant wheaten straw bed in the coach-house at home. Yes, it was certainly time to return. Accordingly, Finn asked his leader to stop, and finding that the man took no notice, he asked again, through his nose, and urgently. The man paid not the slightest heed to this, and that rather angered Finn, who was not accustomed to being ignored. So he planted his 4 feet firmly and stopped dead. As the lead tightened, the slip collar pressed painfully on Finn's throat, but he felt that the time had arrived to bring this excursion to an end, and so steeled himself to ignore this pressure. "None of that now," said the man, with a new note in his voice of extreme harshness. "Come along now, do you hear?" Finn's forelegs remained rigid. He had made up his mind now, and already he was beginning to regret having stayed so long with the stranger. The man now gave a powerful tug at the leather lead, and at that the pressure of the slip collar forced Finn's tongue out between his teeth. This was really painful, but it was clear in Finn's mind that he must go home, so he remained straining backward. "Come on here, you brute!" growled the man savagely, and with a vicious jerk at the lead he took a step to one side, and then kicked Finn on the hindquarters as hard as he could. That was the first real blow Finn had ever received, and it taught him quite a lot. Up till this point it had not occurred to him for a moment that the man entertained any other than kindly, friendly feelings for him. In fact, he supposed that every one entertained kindly feelings towards him. He had never experienced any other sort of attitude. But this savage kick was a revelation to him. Also, it hurt. Finn turned in his tracks and plunged forward in the direction from which they had come with such sudden strength that he almost dragged the lead from the man's strong hand, and would undoubtedly have freed himself but for the slip collar. As it was, the sudden jerk nearly throttled Finn and brought him rolling on his back with all 4 feet in the air. Before he could rise again, the man had planted 2 ferocious kicks on his ribs, and Finn was thankful then to draw a free breath by moving towards his persecutor so as to slacken the pressure on the lead. But the moment he had drawn breath, the desire to escape possessed him once more, and he repeated his leap for freedom. This time the man was prepared, and in addition to the pressure brought about by Finn's reaching the end of his tether, there was the savage extra pressure of a quick backward jerk at the lead to bring the hound on his back a second time. This time the man kicked him very severely, and in addition smote him violently on the nose with clenched fist as he staggered to his feet, gasping for breath. Just then the dim, smoky lights of a cart appeared at the bend in the road, 20 yards away, in the direction of the village. "That you, Bill?" cried the man who held Finn, and an affirmative answer reached him from the cart. "Come on, then, let's get this stubborn beast into the cart." He gave a savage jerk at Finn's slip collar as he spoke, and once more his nailed boot crashed against the bewildered Wolfhound's ribs. The man had an itch of anger and brutality about him by this time. Finn leaped sideways with a quick gasp as the man's boot struck him and the cruel collar tightened. And at this sharp movement of his great body, there in the middle of the road, the pony shied violently, just as it was being drawn in to a standstill. The cart swerved sharply into the hedge, and a cracking sound betrayed the breaking of a shaft. This was the finishing touch required to round off the naturally vicious temper of the man who held Finn into a passion of sullen, brutal anger. He cursed unceasingly, while the man in the cart made the necessary repairs with cord and a couple of sticks from the hedge. And with every curse there was a kick, or a vicious blow, or a savage jerk at the torturing slip collar, and sometimes all 3 together. Finn could have killed the man with ease, but so far the thought of even biting him never occurred to the Wolfhound. Every hour that he had spent in the world had taught him that humans were his friends, his very kindly protectors, his guardians and governors, so to say. Every hour of his mother's life, with but very few exceptions, had borne the same belief in upon her, and her nature was the sweetest and gentlest imaginable. With his father, now, the case was somewhat otherwise. There were those who said that the rather taciturn and shy Dermot owed some of his wonderfully heavy coat to the mésalliance of a forebear of his with a Tibetan sheep-dog of a half-wild sort, with a temper far from reliable. But as yet, at all events, Finn's temper was that of a clean-run, well-bred English boy, frank, open, trusting, and kindly, and sorely as he ached, sorely bewildered as he felt under the rain of blows and kicks, curses and strangling tugs at his collar, he had as yet no thought of vengeance. His only desire was for escape, and a return to the sweet, free life he knew beside the Downs. The man who held Finn instinctively recognized all this, and the knowledge whetted the savagery of his temper, and withdrew all restraint from its cruel indulgence. He had no conscious wish to injure the hound, quite the contrary, since Finn represented money to him, and money was what he desired more than anything else. But he was tired. Things seemed to be going ill with him, his temper was thoroughly roused, and the innocent cause of all this, a sensitive, living creature, was tethered and helpless beside him. And so he kicked and cursed and jerked at the lead, and found relief in Finn's gasps of pain and want of breath. When the shaft was mended, the tailboard of the little cart was let down, and with a savage kick at Finn's hindquarters, the man bade him "Get up there, blank ye! Get up, you brute!" Another kick. Poor Finn tried to squirm forward under the cart to escape the heavy boot of his persecutor. Then he was furiously jerked backward and half throttled. "Steady with him, matey," said the other man. "Don't knock the dollars off of him." "Who asked you to shove your jaw in?" snarled the first man. "You didn't get the brute, did you? Curse him!" Another kick. The other man was used to his friend's temper, and said nothing, but he hated to see a valuable animal knocked about, just as he would have hated to see money thrown in the gutter instead of into a publican's till. So he stooped down and lifted Finn's 4 feet from the ground and placed them on the floor of the cart. "My oath," he said, "but he's a tidy weight, ain't he? Up you go, my bully boy!" And up Finn went, on the spur of another violent kick, which broke the skin across one of his hocks. The lead was now fastened close down to a staple in the floor of the cart, Finn being forced down on his side by the simple process of being knelt upon by his persecutor. To make doubly sure of him, his forelegs were then tightly lashed together with his own green collar, and then the two men mounted the front of the cart and drove off. The memory of that night's drive burnt itself deep into Finn's young mind. He never really forgot it. That is to say, its effect upon his attitude toward men and life was never completely lost. His skin was broken in 3 or 4 places. Every bone in his body ached from the heavy kicks he had received. An intolerable thirst kept him gasping for every breath he drew. The cramp set up in his forelegs by their being strapped tightly together, one across the other, was an exquisite pain, and his muzzle was held hard down against the grimy floorboards of the cart, while his mind was full of a black, despairing fear of he knew not what. It was a severe ordeal for one who, up till then, had never even known what it meant to receive a severe verbal scolding, for one who had never seen a man's hand lifted in anger. An end came at last to this horrible drive. "Thank God, yere's orley," said the man who drove, and after another minute or two the little cart came to a standstill in a walled-in yard. The pony was taken out and stabled, and then the man addressed as "matey," still sullen and sour, let down the tail-board of the cart with a jerk and dragged Finn out by the collar, allowing him to fall with a thud from the cart to the ground, rendered helpless by the strap round his forelegs. "'Ere, get up out of that!" growled the man with a careless kick. Then, seeing that Finn could not move, he bent down, unbuckled the green enamelled strap, dragged it roughly away, and kicked the dog again. Cramped and sore beyond belief, Finn staggered on to his feet. A door was opened, and Finn was jerked and dragged into a perfectly dark, evil-smelling hole, about 4 feet square, with an earthen floor from which horrible odours rose. The ground in this place was filthy. It had no drainage and no ventilation, except a few round holes in the door, which door was now slammed to and locked on the outside. "Ain't you going to give him a drink, matey?" asked Bill outside. "Drink be blowed! Let him wait till mornin'. Come in and have one yourself. I'm blessed glad this night's job's done, and if I can't make 50 quid out of it, I shall want to know the reason why, I can tell yer. Big, ugly brute, ain't he? Strong as a mule, too. I'd want to be paid plenty handsome for the keepin' of such a brute, but the American gent's red hot ter get him, I can tell yer. Biggest ever bred, they tell me. I think I shall have to stick on another tenner, Bill? Come on." Their very voices were a misery to the shrinking, aching, choking Finn, who stood shuddering in his fetid den, his sensitive nose wrinkling with horror and disgust. His need of water was the thing which hurt him the most cruelly, but the nature of his prison was a good deal of a torture too. Remember that his life so far had been as cleanly and decent in detail as yours or mine. Certainly this was a sad plight for the hero of the Kennel Club show, and the finest living descendant of a 1500-year-old line of princes among dogs. End of Chapter 7